All right.
All right, I want to start about that. Too many cooks in the kitchen. So, okay, so do we...
We don't have a quorum.
Okay, we do not have a quorum.
We'll do by email again. Have Joe Rivera on the line.
Yeah. So what board members do we have on the phone?
We have Paula, Carl, Don, Joe, and yourself.
Okay. Any other board members that we missed?
I see Scott Newman.
Okay. So since we don't have even remotely a quorum, we'll basically just do a quick kind of run through our agenda and kind of update. So obviously we'll skip the meeting minutes. Chief Tate did send his apologies. He had something come up that he could not make it today for the meeting. So we'll just kind of run through our agenda here, giving some updates and have any conversation, offer any questions. So first item on the agenda is the FCC filing. Just kind of summarize everyone for those that are unaware. The governing body did submit an FCC filing early, I believe it was July 6th, I want to say, regarding interoperability with the public safety network and other commercial vendors. Basically, the governing body, the request was to the FCC to open up a docket on the issue of interoperability between the National Public Safety Broadband Network and other vendors besides AT&T. That request was, I don't want to say rescinded because you can't rescind an FCC filing, but there was a letter submitted the following Friday, which would be, I guess that would be the 13th, asking the FCC to not take action on that specific letter. And I will turn it over to Tony to kind of talk through the process and the rationale from the governor's office with that second request. Yeah.
Yes. Hello, everybody. This is Tony. So what happened, frankly, is obviously in the past there had been other FCC filings and commentary that had been filed with the FCC that did not go through the governor's office. But once the governor made the decision to opt in to FirstNet, that at that point it became a government-to-government agreement, such that it is, between the governor and FirstNet. And so subsequently, what we should have done was to at least review the filing with the governor's office before it was actually posted. And so, but that doesn't minimize the concern, obviously, that folks have in regards to interoperability. And I will share with you that Chief Tate and I met with Donald Lind, the Lieutenant Governor, and Pat Myers, the Governor's Chief of Staff, this morning to kind of talk through the concerns that the governing body has. And I will say that, Chief Tate did a phenomenal job of really outlining to the Lieutenant Governor and to Pat what the issues are in layman's terms so that people really got it and understood it. And so one other piece of information I can share with you is that Chief Tate has also had a conversation with Chris Sambar, who, as you guys know, is the head of the FirstNet project, if you will, for AT&T. And Chris has made a commitment, and actually had made the commitment to the governor's office as well, to come out and sit down with the governing body and bring whatever technical resources required to walk through all of our issues and concerns. And so what we came out of the meeting with the Lieutenant Governor was to give, the governing body and AT&T that opportunity to have this meeting and post that discussion, see where the governing body is in regards to those issues and determine what next steps we'll take. So that's basically it in a nutshell in terms of where we are. Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, and so to follow up on that, I had a conversation as well with Chief Tate, and so our thoughts, and I'll throw it out to the governing body for comments or questions, and then to anyone else on the phone, is to, as Tony mentioned, arrange for a meeting with AT&T and FirstNet in the next month and a half to go over the interoperability issue. We will be in contact with Emil to see if he can help assist us in that process to, since his report was kind of the genesis of this whole thing. So we'll be in touch with him to see what our options are with him to provide that assistance, but to really have AT&T come out, speak to the issues we have, perhaps lay out some case studies to see, how those case studies would be addressed, and to go from there. And then, with the governing body, if the governing body is satisfied with that response, then obviously that's good progress. If after that meeting we are still not satisfied with the response, then we would continue to work with the governor's office to further the issue. So that's kind of our thoughts at this point. With that, I'll open it up to first anyone on the governing body to speak on the issue or that plan of action that we have, and then open it up for some general conversation as well. So anyone on the governing body wish to speak to the issue or the process or the proposal?
This is Paula.
No.
Oh, yeah, Paula.
I heard Carl too, probably going to say the same thing. I'm all for having another meeting, and I say another meeting because we had the 911 task force meeting held in Rifle not too long ago with FirstNet there, and brought this issue up with them with the interoperability and concerns that we have. So I'm all for having another meeting. I'm just a little skeptical on perhaps, if we're going to hear the same information or not, and where we're really going to be able to go from here, because I think it's going to be the same message that you relayed in the letter, and I'm not sure that there are really going to be any steps taken, but at least we'll be heard again.
Sounds good. Anyone else from the governing body?
Hey, Brian, this is Don. If we could maybe get something for them to talk about. I know they gave a 5-year plan to increase the coverage and the footprint in Colorado, but I know we're only 6-7 months into it, but I know when we talked to him previously, it was more of a, yeah, this is what we want to do, but now that we're into it, where are they? What is their plan moving forward? And just an update. I think that would be beneficial as well.
Yeah, Don, that's a great point, Don. And I think the other thing we talked about was, in the opt-in letter, AT&T did commit to semi-annual operational reviews. And there's been nothing really to review to this point, because to your point, there really hasn't been anything of substance, no progress of substance. But IOC 1 is officially due September 30th, which means that initial coverage that was on the state plan portal and some of the tasks associated with IOC 1 are due September 30th. So if we have this meeting towards the end of September, early October, I think we can kind of pair it together and, to your point, Don, say, okay, where are we at with the requirements? Where are we at with coverage? Where are we at with some of the sites that were promised? And then, get into the interoperability issues, speak to that. What's your long-term goal, and to me, it's kind of an immediate term in terms of when a lot of this functionality is over-the-top applications, and then what's the long-term implementation once some of this functionality goes to the network level, and focus on that. So that's kind of our thought, is to turn this into perhaps our first operational review, and talk about all the issues. So,
and I'd also like to include on that their discussions on where they're at with Union and Viero and some of the other smaller rural carriers.
Excellent point, Carl. So it sounds like everyone's in support of this plan moving forward, that we'll take the lead in terms of reaching out to both AT&T and FirstNet and scheduling this, and then letting everyone know what the dates are. We'll try to pick a place that can support everyone being here. And again, the SLIPP grant will support governing body members' travel expenses to this meeting. So we'll try to get it to a point where we can get some in-person, a significant amount of in-person attendance.
One thing you guys might want to consider is whether or not we host it at the FirstNet lab up in Boulder.
Yeah,
it's a very large facility.
Yeah.
Tracy's on the line. Tracy, we'll circle with you offline on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
That'd be great, thanks.
Okay.
Cool. Anyone else from the governing body have any questions on this issue or the process before I open it up for everyone else on the phone? Okay, great. Anyone else, non-governing body individual that has questions or comments on the issue?
Hey, Brian, this is Scott Newman from City of Aurora. I have 2 questions for you. Just make sure you're by everybody for that meeting. You mean it would be open for other participants to be present as well?
Yes, our perspective is that this would be just like our regular governing body meetings or public meetings, that this would be a public meeting as well. So.
Perfect. And then do you, not that it has to be something overly formal, but do you or Tony either have a write-up about this? Because I discussed this topic with public safety leadership as well as city management, and they were going to ask me to reach out to the governor's office for some understanding of why the decision was made to rescind that. So if you guys have anything that I could provide, that would be great.
What I would recommend that you do is, if you want to have a discussion on, the governor's office position on it, to contact Simon Tafoya, and I can arrange that for you.
If you could, Tony, that would be great, because, or I could just try repeating back what what you guys just shared. But if they need more detail, if you don't mind, maybe I'll reach out to you and see if we can arrange that.
Yeah. Shoot me an email, Scott, and then I'll work with Tony to make sure to get you Simon's contact information.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions from anyone else on the call on the FCC interoperability issue before we move on? Okay. Next item on the agenda is our statewide telecommunications infrastructure plan. This is moving forward. CDOT has completed the draft of their fiber plan. Just to recap, CDOT's been working with a vendor for the last 6 months to inventory all existing fiber assets and then prioritize future fiber development across the state. They are looking at a public safety aspect in their algorithm for prioritizing fiber development. They utilize both DTRS tower locations and PSAP locations as input parameters. So basically, the proximity of any of their fiber routes to any of those 2 groups of assets increase the priority for that fiber. So we are working with them. They're working on finalizing that. I believe it will be a public document as soon as they have finalized it, probably in the next 2-3 weeks, I think. They're shooting to finalize it, that piece. So that basically outlines all the fiber routes and prioritizes future fiber development in the state. At the same time, we are still in the process of going through all the state-owned towers. If everyone recalls, House Bill 1373 required OIT to make any state-owned tower assets open to co-location, given a process and approval by the CIO and the director of the State Patrol. So we are working in that process. We've been going through all the leases, all the tower locations, figuring out, what the parameters might look like, and going through that. We hope to have a draft of that, in the next month or so, of not only what our analysis is of what towers, we're trying to prioritize what towers, would probably be fairly straightforward in being this, partaking in this program, what towers would have significant barriers, whether that be structural or lease issues, that type of thing. So we are working through that. The overarching telecommunications plan, the initial draft of that is due to the Lieutenant Governor in September. That will really outline the combination of the fiber assets with our tower assets and proposed tower program. We do believe we'll need additional legislation to implement the tower program, just logistical things like making sure that OIT has the authority to sign contracts and that we're not in competition with the private sector, Tabor issues, that kind of thing. So we will be working with our legislative liaison as well. And the sponsors, we did work with the sponsors of 1373 last year, and we let them know that we would likely have to get this additional legislative modifications, and they were okay with that. So that said, we've heard some good feedback about this idea of being proactive in our telecommunications approach. Once we get this program up and running, we will continue to work with all levels of government. We have a steering committee set forth right now that includes the 911 folks, Municipal League, Colorado counties, to look at trying to integrate local jurisdictions into this as well. as we move down the track too, we will also be reaching out, and we have reached out to the infrastructure owner, the land mobile radio infrastructure owners, to, make sure that we can kind of try to have some coordinated efforts as the carriers are aggressively building out. We are seeing many carriers aggressively looking to build out our state, both from a small cell and a macro cell perspective. CDOT is working on a deal right now to close the gap up between Lyons and Estes Park, which is an area that we've struggled with for a long time. Where we were having some great discussions with T-Mobile on their build out. They are aggressively building out their 600 megahertz spectrum and want to play an active role throughout our state. So overall, the infrastructure plans moving forward, as soon as we get to a point where it kind of makes sense and we have all the pieces put together, again, we will be reaching out and putting out a draft to everyone for comment, and kind of giving us some perspective on moving forward. So any questions on that piece? Okay. Kim, you want to talk about the SLGP 2.0 projects?
Sure. First, I want to share that the NTIA officially advised Department of Homeland Security or Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management here at the state that the second tranche of money will be available. So overall, Colorado will receive $750,000, and then we match that at 20%. So that essentially allows us to do everything we budgeted for within the initial grant application, which is good news. All of the match is coming from our team's hours on these initiatives. There won't be any requirement to track your time like we had to last time, or to ask for agencies to provide any sort of hard match, or for the state to come up with a hard match, which would have been another option. So that's great news. On the three projects that we've been working on, the first one is a coverage assessment of the FirstNet built by AT&T network post IOC1, so post September 30th. We can begin assessing the coverage. Our office is in the process of procuring the tools to do that. We're going to kind of have a multifaceted approach. We already know that the State Patrol is out driving around, and we can access their network performance information for the areas that use AT&T FirstNet. Well, it'll be the AT&T network essentially. We can look at that coverage just by pulling it down, but we're going to look at hiring a consultant to assist us in ensuring that we have a smooth process so OIT can continue to do that going forward, because that's a low-hanging fruit in terms of coverage and review of that coverage. We'll also be writing a couple of what are called documented quotes for OIT's purposes, or DQs, where we will ask vendors to provide us equipment and access to their software in both a mobile and a handheld environment, and then we can ask agencies to use those devices for a short period of time, and as they're out already doing their response, they can assess AT&T coverage in that area. And then lastly, oh no, that's it, because we're also, yeah, that's it. Right. Yep. Those are our three approaches, sorry. Yep. So we hope to get that launched again in October, so we may be in touch with some of your agencies, or if you have interest, if you know your agencies are willing to do that, please let us know. On the LMR to LTE integration or transition, that's kind of a vague area still with the NTIA. We did speak with, through the Public Safety Communications Subcommittee, ISSI working group, we spoke with a large number of the network owners and operators, or infrastructure owners and operators throughout the state, and they are interested in OIT taking kind of a high-level approach with regards to just looking generally at how what Colorado should consider as they plan for some sort of integration to LMR to LTE, and then considerations they would need to be aware of if they were to do a long-term transition as well. So that is kind of in all the work our team is doing, it's a little bit of a lower priority, so we probably won't get going on that in terms of a procurement for a consultant to help us with that until in September, October timeframe. And then the last piece is the data sharing initiative, which is around using the funds to get some legal guidance or framework around how information can be shared between mental health professionals and public safety professionals. And we vetted that internally at OIT. We have to vet that with the governor's office, but we anticipate getting the official go-ahead to begin coordinating with the CISC, or the Colorado Information Sharing Consortium, for those of you familiar with the old kind of governance of COPLINK, to work with them, and then with our state mental health, or our state health and human services agencies, not just mental health. We've been speaking with them too, and they are doing a lot of work around coordinating data sharing too. So we hope to kick that off. Do we have a timeline on?
Yes, we are meeting with the Lieutenant Governor's office.
Oh, it's really September.
On September 4th.
Right. So we will probably let you all know about the progress on that in by email, since this group will not meet again until November. And we will likely seek your participation if you're interested or available. Any questions on the Sleepy 2.0 project? That's how we're spending Colorado's money. If you have any deeper questions or concerns, you can certainly let us know if you don't feel comfortable bringing them up now. Okay. Oh. All right.
Thank you. Hello? Hello? Oh.
Hi, this is Glenn.
Hey, Glenn. Yep.
Yes, I had some questions, comments for Kim. So this is Glenn with CU Boulder, and we're kind of running on very similar projects here in understanding our real estate assets from a tower perspective and the carriers coming in. So whenever the state does complete the first draft, we would love to see it and review it so we can kind of be influenced by it. Second point is, our biggest concern with FirstNet is in-building wireless coverage for law enforcement and public safety in the future. So we would like to understand, once the state OIT picks a vendor to do the coverage analysis and testing, just to understand who the company is, and maybe we could actually use the same vendor to do an audit of FirstNet's coverage inside our buildings here on campus as well.
Yeah, Glenn. So, our approach really is the vendor we're picking is really just going to help us with the data collection piece of that. We're going to do a lot of the analysis and reporting. We have a GIS team, we have a GIS person on our team. And as Kim mentioned, we're going to work, with someone just to help us out. So, no, I've actually, Chief Tate in Denver asked me the same question that, he said, my concern is more in buildings. So the solution we're going to look for will support, basically all aspects in terms of, outdoor, vehicular, and indoor coverage, so that once we get whatever solution it is, we'd be able to come up with you guys, and you guys could do that testing of indoor coverage at CU, and then we'll do the analytics and reporting, so you guys would have the same information we would report back to FirstNet and to AT&T.
Great. And is the scope that's going to be for FirstNet, or would it also be for all carrier coverage, everywhere, indoors and outdoors?
The Sleepy grant will support data collection for the FirstNet network.
Okay, great. Great news.
Yeah, Glenn, and I can circle with you as we finalize the specs if you guys have some experience or thoughts on that, just to see if there's anything we're missing. So I'll circle with you offline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on to outreach? Okay. Before I turn over to Ed to talk about everything else, I'll just hit on APCO. Sarah and I went to APCO. I would say fairly uneventful. I'm trying to think. Can't really. I don't know if anyone. Some other folks were there, but I don't think we really learned anything that we didn't already know, I would say.
Well, Carl and Dawn were there as well.
Oh, yeah. So Carl, Dawn, I don't know if you guys had any other perspective, but I would say from our perspective, not really a whole lot new that we learned. Carl, Dawn, do you have anything different?
No, I'd agree with that assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing that I saw that was maybe newer is that there are some companies getting close to producing suitcase versions of setting up kind of like booster tower locations. and the ability for local agencies to purchase those type of things. I know there's a lot working on them, but they're getting a lot closer, and that's something that we as a group talked about, that our agencies may want to purchase these type of devices specifically for situations where we need to get in when there isn't any coverage.
Yeah, thanks, Don. That's a great point. And I guess I would retract the statement of nothing really new. To add on to what you just said, I would say there is a ton of new companies. When you did walk the floor at APCO, there are a slew of new companies, with all kinds of different technology, whether that's what Don talked about in terms of network on a box or network extenders, to devices, to apps. So unfortunately, I think everyone's about to be overwhelmed with the amount of new technology that's coming to the market. So, great. So Ed, you want to cover Mountain Connect and the other events?
Sure. Did you want to just give an overview of Mountain Connect in general before I talk about public safety?
Okay, yeah. So Mountain Connect conference, that's our annual, what historically has been our kind of our broadband palooza for our rural broadband efforts. This year, the sponsors of that conference reached out to us and said we want to do a public safety track to try to bring the public safety conversation in with the traditional, Internet of Things, smart city, rural broadband expansion conference. So Ed led the effort to work with those folks to put together that track, and several people on this call actually spoke at that. So
yeah, we did. And if we didn't get around to you, and thank you, I know Kim thanked the folks that she had asked to join, and I did as well. But if we missed you, we really appreciate your participation. It was very well received. So much so that we've been asked to come back and do the same thing. And so our team will be meeting next week, to start throwing some plans out for next year. If you have any thoughts about, and you have to kind of look into your crystal ball and into the future and what really might be hitting the state of Colorado and what we really may need to focus on next year. If you could look into that crystal ball and get with me, we'd love to start throwing those down. If you have even a description and maybe some thought leaders that we can reach out to, we would appreciate that. So just to let you know, our plans are moving forward. We'll be starting that process early, and so we'll let you know by our November meeting what's going on there. I know that I was remiss and didn't get these in here, but let me just mention that we helped the Center of Excellence do a couple of events. We supported them in getting some devices for, number one, Country Jam. And we'll actually, when our newsletter comes out, you'll see a blurb on some lessons learned. But, just to give you kind of an idea on the high level, we actually did learn quite a bit, such as whenever we have cell on wheels or macro cells that are in an operational vicinity, we need to make sure that the cell on wheels have the same type of updates. As we'll talk about, we found it was hard to achieve. We would get priority service, but as we would move closer to the cow that didn't have the updates, we would lose it, and that would actually interfere. So I wrote a little article, little blog come out in the newsletter. If you're interested, we can give you some lessons learned there. Also, putting together now what we learned in Telluride. Telluride was exactly the week right after Country Jam, and we were actually able to take some devices, and we were able to test the two of the priority networks, and we were able to encapsulate some of that data. So I'll look for that one as well. The only other thing that I guess I'll need to bring up, we're looking at a lot of technologies, and we're actually going to meet next week and put things in some bigger buckets, things that, like coverage, obviously. We need antennas and ways to boost that signal, as Don was talking about. And so we're going to put some bigger buckets, maybe 4 or 5 big buckets the state of Colorado is looking at. Again, if you have thoughts or ideas on that, please let me know. But one of the ways that we are going to begin to push out all the emerging technologies, and as Brian's talking about, this exponential increase, is that we're going to start a lunch and learn series next week We're going to start with a company called Orion Labs. And again, if you have thoughts or ideas about what we need to do in these, don't hesitate to let us know. If you didn't see that advertisement for that Lunch and Learn, it's going to be over the internet, and so you can do it from the comfort of your own desk. But if you didn't see that, reach out to our office and we'll make sure that you get that. And please invite anybody that you think may be interested. We'll always try to bring to you things that will make you more efficient and will give you the kind of solutions to the problems or needs that you have. That's basically all I got.
Good. Any questions for Ed on outreach engagement? Okay, so moving on to new and old business, we kind of talked about our semi-annual operational review / interoperability meeting, so we'll kind of move forward with that, keep everyone apprised. Next item is long-term governance discussion. And this is probably a discussion for the board, but I think as you guys are aware, there's multiple groups in the state that kind of look at public safety communications. One of the things that's been trending and somewhat meandering towards something is, you know, trying to figure out what group can provide a lot of a holistic view of all the communications technologies that we're looking at. Recently, the PSCS, which some of the folks that are on this board sit on, added 911 representation to the PSCS, so that when we talk about communications, the voice of 911 is there as well. Recently, the SCIP plan, the SCIP work, or the semi-annual SCIP workshop took place, and Kim participated in that. And one of the things that has come up out of that, and that we've talked with the PSCS and contact with this board as well, is, do we think, you know, given the way the FirstNet implementation has occurred, and where the public safety broadband space is going, do we still think there's value in having a separate group looking at just public safety broadband, or do we think there's value in looking at or including public safety broadband in the overall public safety communications conversations that we have at like PSCS and other areas? And if so, you know, do we want to take a look at some of these structures and try to continue to not consolidate, I guess maybe consolidate is the word, you know, our voice, you know, and I think, you know, obviously the FCC Interoperability filing is one example of a voice. You know, I think the folks at PSCS were very interested in that, you know, and had some concern when we retracted it. So, you know, I just want to throw that out there, you know, for the board. Do we think it still makes sense to have this kind of separate conversation, or, you know, would this board support looking, you know, having a conversation with a group like PSCS to say, let's, you know, increase representation in that board to focus on this idea of public broadband, perhaps bring in some more of the IT perspective. You know, I know Scott from Aurora is on this call a lot. I know Jim from Grand Junction is on the call a lot. And, you know, so to me, it's kind of those voices as well of this public safety broadband / IT perspective. And, you know, do we want to kind of combine those voices into one group that looks at the whole big picture, or do we still like the fact that there's multiple groups looking at multiple different ways? So that's just kind of a thing we've thrown out. We have had conversations. You know, Kim and I go to PSCS every month and give an update, and I think they're open to this conversation as well. So just kind of wanted to throw that out to the board and get any kind of feedback that you guys may have on that idea. So,
Brian, Joe Ribeiro, I'll be the first to jump in on this. I would like to see us explore the effort of just perhaps a public safety information technology consortium that looks at all angles. I'm afraid that we're stovepiping, even though many of us on this board are representative in other interests. There's a lot of opportunity for things to fall through the cracks. And if we were taking a more holistic look at what's going on in the information technology world, both network transport and information sharing, the whole gamut, I think it's a worthwhile effort.
Thanks, Chief. Yeah, you know, and I think one of the other kind of things that spurred this is I think everyone's aware that SAFER bill that was passed with the school safety, you know, and we at OIT spent some time, you know, working with the sponsors of that bill, and I know PSCS did, but to us, that's when we kind of realized, you know, the initial focus of that bill was just simply on LMR integration. And, you know, one of the things we tried to get across was all these new products we're seeing. It's not just about LMR. It's, there's products that give, teachers a panic button on their smartphone that talks directly with, 911 centers. It's video feeds that go from the school to the different areas. And it's a convergence of technology. And to your point, that's what another thing that kind of we're looking at going, we can't just look at one thing anymore. It's got to be everything put together.
Yeah, this is Glenn Rodriguez, Steve Boulder, and that's exactly what I'm seeing here on campus. I'm seeing a convergence of a carrier-owned broadband spectrum converging with enterprise-owned wireless assets like Wi-Fi. And on the flip side, I'm also seeing a convergence of public safety LMR integration with broadband as well on campus. I think it's just a matter of time where all the three will kind of coexist with each other and use the right medium that makes sense in the most efficient way.
All right, thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Chief. Any other governing body members that have any feedback in addition to Chief Ribeiro?
This is Paula.
Yeah, Paula.
I also support what the chief just said, and Brian, it makes so much sense from being on several groups that we really do seem to be siloed a little bit. Fortunately, there are people that are on, several groups, so it tends to bring those conversations forefront. But as people change and move, I don't want to lose that. And so I would be totally open to having that discussion with the PSCS or seeing how that might work out for us. I'm in support.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on the board? Well, I guess what I'll do, actually first, I guess any other comment or feedback from other folks on the call, non-board members on the call? Okay. Well, what I will do is just kind of get a formal, yay or nay. I will throw out an email to the governing body and reference this conversation and Paula, your and Chief's comments, and then get kind of an official approval to move forward with that. And then once we do that, we'll start having some conversations with the PSCS folks, and potentially maybe we'll arrange, a conversation or phone call with anyone on both groups that would like to participate in that and kind of work through this. So look for an email from us here soon with moving forward on that.
CDPHE representation.
Yes.
Lyle Moore no longer works for CDPHE.
Oh.
He is now working on emergency preparedness at the Colorado Hospital Association. Okay. Greg Stasinos was his proxy, so I just wanted to make you all aware, and I will circle with Greg. They participated when they could, but it's just as general information. Yep. And in light of this governance discussion, we will figure out how to include their interests as well. That's just information in case any of you try to reach it. So.
Sure. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other conversations? Go to the order. Anything new? Anything we missed from anyone on the phone? Going once, going twice. Okay.
Brian?
Yes.
Sorry, this is Bill Malone. I know FirstNet's on the call, so I wanted to ask a question with this upcoming AT&T meeting on interoperability. If FirstNet will come prepared to be open to the possibility that not everyone's going to adopt FirstNet, at least not in the immediate future, and perhaps maybe never. And so interoperability, and I hope the governor's office has their ear on this too, is that interoperability is something that we all need regardless of the requirements of the governor's office to adhere to the act in opting in or opting out. Because I still have this sense, and I think I picked it up with what Carl said, maybe what Scott Newman said, is that the meeting is essential, but I hope that it's not just take this and eat this from AT&T and FirstNet. I would like to see have a serious conversation about interoperability statewide, because I assure you that not everybody's going to opt in. FirstNet is certainly not in the immediate future.
Yeah, I'll let I'll let Tracy respond to that, Bill. But I think from our perspective, that would be the underlining tenet of the conversation. And again, we'll see if we can procure email services for a while to help us kind of frame this. But from my perspective, it is that very point that in the foreseeable and probably long-term future, we're going to have three, and I say three, assuming the Sprint T-Mobile network merger goes through. We're going to have three carriers that offer some type of public safety grade service. Local jurisdictions will continue to be able to make a choice on what they choose. We also have, 11 unique LMR networks in our state. And so how do we solve this problem given the pragmatic reality that we face? And that would be kind of the springboard for the conversation, where we'll be to look at this from a pragmatic, on the ground perspective. So that's our thoughts. And then Tracy, are you still on? Do you want to respond to Bill's comments at all?
No, I'm still here. Yes, I'm still here. And those are good points, which we're well aware of.
Okay, great. So Bill, so that's our intention is to have a down and dirty conversation about operational factors on the ground and how we're going to move forward in this new world, especially again, given the conversation we just had about other technologies coming into play as well.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thoughts or comments?
Hey, Brian, this is Scott Newman again. I just thought this might be for the benefit of the rest on the call and for the governing body to be aware. Somebody, I'm not certain who, has come to our fire stations and dropped off flyers at fire stations, which are basically marketing materials for FirstNet, with phone numbers and contact information of who to contact to subscribe. And so I just thought the group should be aware that at least in the city of Aurora, that's taking place. And Tracy, I know you're on the call, but if you can, for what it's worth, take it back and let others know that that is entirely inappropriate. The city has a very stringent procurement process, and reaching out to the end users directly bypasses all city process and does not in any way engender any kind of favor with the city. So just thought I'd make sure that the rest of the group is aware that at least in the city of Aurora, that's happened.
Yes, Scott, and we've seen similar things happen in other areas of the state as well, and I believe Tony's had some conversations with Tracy on that issue. So, anyone else? Thoughts or comments for the good of the order? Okay, well, thank you everyone for your time. Board members, look for that email from me regarding the governance discussion, and as well as we will work with FirstNet and AT&T to set up that meeting, and we will make sure that we let everyone know as soon as possible when that meeting is, so you can plan for that. But with that, we will adjourn at 3:20. Thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.